Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me? My name is Jonathan. Can everyone hear me? My name is Jonathan Ferrara. I'm an artist, gallery owner, and cultural producer here in New Orleans. And it's my pleasure to moderate this brief panel on Through the Eyes of Artists, Culture Across Generations, talking about New Orleans and the role of art in our community. It's my pleasure to be here with Marcus Akinlana, whose work draws from African American heritage and his world mythologies to create inspirational images. Also have Brandan Odums, founder and director of Cent Entertainment, a youth educational social enterprise that produces mixed media content and events in the overlap between pop culture and social awareness. And to my immediate left here, one of our young artists, Leonard Galmon, a NOCA grad, and he is now entering his second year at Yale University as a visual arts student. I wanted to start this conversation to really, on August 17th, local art critic Eric Bookhart, who writes for the Gambit Weekly and has been on the scene here in New Orleans for over 30, 40 years, wrote this. He said, "There has long been a utopian yet rarely acknowledged undercurrent to life here, and its transformation would not have nearly been as dramatic if not for the way ordinary folks and artists alike came to understand that community is more than just hanging out with friends and that creativity is more than just making something that looks cool. Those things are important, but Katrina taught us that a crisis can serve as a catalyst for the innovation needed to take things to the next level." So my questions to you, gentlemen, Marcus, we'll start with you, is how have you and your work changed since Katrina and because of Katrina?
I truthfully can't see any difference in my mission as an artist, but the enormous destruction and death experienced during Katrina, death of loved ones and beloved community members and family members, et cetera, so forth, caused me to be a more compassionate, focused human being. So when you become a more compassionate and focused human being, obviously that's going to affect all art forms that you're involved in.
Brandan, you've been, the Exhibit B project that we were discussing backstage kind of factors into this whole equation of how has Katrina really transformed you and your artwork, and this is a perfect example because it's such a success as a project.
Thank you. I guess for me, Elder told me a long time ago, he said art for art's sake is not truth to anything that tribal people have come from. And he said art for us have always been a way, it was survival technology. It was inexplicable to who we are. So for me, I think to New Orleans in general, and the culture and the creators in New Orleans, I think art has always been a way to create a sense of survival and to create a sense of response and to turn struggle into beauty and to take the little and to make a lot. Like artists are alchemists. We transform and we turn lead into gold every day. And I think that Katrina provided that opportunity to turn lead into gold, especially for me as an artist, because I've seen situations and spaces and places that were forgotten, and connected to those spaces were people that were also forgotten. And I saw the role I played as an artist as a way to shed light and to transform those places. So like Exhibit B, where we transformed that abandoned apartment complex, it was a way to say, this is here, but it shouldn't be. And as an artist, we have a role to play and a responsibility. So my work has changed tremendously because Katrina provided a real life example of what that looks like, and that continues to shape the way I create and the way I think about how I create.
And Leonard, you're the young man on the panel here. So you were 9 years old when Katrina hit, right? Yeah. So how do you feel before and after? But how has it shaped what you make as you embark on this journey of becoming an artist?
Well, can everyone hear me? Katrina hasn't really affected my art. I was 9, and for me, it was more of an adventure than a tragedy. It wasn't until years later that I read and saw the photographs that I realized that, Katrina was like a disaster, really. What's the rest?
Well, just how it influenced me. Let me step back. Tell me about the first moment that you consider yourself an artist. When did you know? Because that's you're actually young enough to actually remember it. Most of us get to a point where we can't remember that first time. So can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, it was actually very recently, like this past school year. Before then, I had only, I had thought of artists like I think of school. It was something I was interested in, and I just wanted to know more, learn new techniques, and learn how to convey ideas. But it wasn't until I started to have something I wanted to say that I began to think of myself as an artist. And that happened over this past school year.
Cool. Marcus, can you tell us a little bit, you talked about Katrina, how you responded to it, but how does your identity as an artist change when you're in other cities? Because you've lived in a variety of different cities. How is it different, say, in Chicago where it is here in New Orleans, or is it the same?
It is not the same. And my identity doesn't change. I'm a third generation New Orleans creative, artistic person. My son is now the fourth, and we have many members of our family. So, it is our way of life here to participate in cultural genius, as Brandan just said. Okay, and there's something about the culture here and our way of life that's like bayou waters, it just runs in your bloodstream, okay? You just can't explain it, okay? So it's not the same. However, myself personally, I'm dedicated to cultural activism through arts, through bringing something that's, I believe, is more holistic and socially conscious to society, to bring art as a benefit to society, and that's universal. That extends around the globe. One of the things I'd like to see here deepen within our cultural context of New Orleans, which many people are working on with the Doug Red Cultural Warrior Summit, which is a summit that we started in 2007 to help be the culture here in New Orleans, is reaching deeper into what I call our traditional culture and going and bringing forth some of the deepest, most genius aspects of New Orleans culture, not just some of the things that kind of popped out, things that are prevalently well known, right? They both can have a time to shine.
Brandan, 100,000 people visited Exhibit B. How did that feel to be able to communicate on that level with that many people to get across your ideas? Because that's not a platform that most artists can really, 100,000 people is reaching a lot of people. How did that feel, and what did it mean personally and also professionally?
I think for all the artists involved, and it was over 35 artists that placed a hand on that space and helped transform it. I think for all of us involved, it let us see that art has power. I think that there's an idea that art aesthetically can improve or add value to, you put a painting up in your house and you feel better. But I think art has power in terms of the role it can play. And all of us, we shared this idea that we didn't have the money to repair that space. We didn't have the patience to knock on doors and say, why is this here? But we did have our paintbrushes and our pens and our creative thoughts. And with that alone, we were able to transform that space. So I think for all of us, seeing the people present was a validation of that thought and that process. And it still continues to what we continue to do. We're still doing projects where we're trying to imply that message into other spaces. So, yeah.
What's next for you?
I just completed a mural in New Orleans East on the Grand Theater, which is it was an abandoned theater that's been there since Katrina. We just did this peace wall where I did this mural on the whole thing to send a message of peace in New Orleans East. So it's right off the interstate. So if you're leaving I-10 out the city, you can see it off the Reed exit. So it's not stopping. There's always things to be done. someone told me as long as you follow the needs of the people, you never run out of things to do. So there's always work to be done.
Amen, amen. And Leonard, I have a question because you're now at Yale, and that's kind of like the tip of the spear in the art world. Do you see yourself? It's a long ways away, but do you see yourself coming back to New Orleans, or if we're so lucky to have you back? Just keep talking, man. You're all right.
Okay. Yes. So like that also ties into me having something to say, and what I want to say deals with kids in the poorest neighborhoods in the city. These are the neighborhoods I grew up in, and I don't know, like the past few months, I've become aware of all the psychological effects this country can have on young black children growing up in this country. And I want to do something about that. So I'll definitely be back.
Cool. This is another question for all three of you as our time kind of winds down a little bit here. The one question I would ask you, all of you, is what, if you were to pick one thing, because there's a myriad of different time frames. Thank you. That's for you in case it doesn't, not right now. So if there's one thing that you could change in this city, could be from an artistic perspective or just in general, but from the perspective of an artist, which I always find is useful because I don't want to say we come out of left field, we come out of a different direction than just a bunch of lawyers, no offense to lawyers and doctors sitting around the room, bankers, but we come at it from a different direction. So if there was one thing that you could change about this city, let's start with Marcus, what could you latch on to?
Well, I think I'm gonna reiterate, because this is what's been on my mind lately as on the path of building the world I want to see. The world I want to see is not a world that comes out of colonialism, white supremacy, racism, or any of these types of things. The world I would love to see is a multicultural, abundant, thriving world. And I think one thing that can help us now is to examine ourselves culturally as we're coming up on this 300-year anniversary. I got this from Luther Gray, by the way, harping on this 300-year anniversary. But this is a time for us to examine ourselves, and we have created here in this unique ecosystem a unique culture, but it has some deep aspects that several of the artists, creators, and musicians and creative people in this city we would like to see come more to the forefront. I've been working with jazz musicians lately, and that was part of our plan. It came out of the Doug Red Cultural Warriors Summit to bring all of the arts together into one, which we feel is more representative of the indigenous culture of this place, of the African culture of this place. When I say indigenous, I mean Native American, and all of the other cultures that came here and mixed together to make this gumbo, right? So I guess if I had to chop it down to one thing, I would like to invite people to join us into the opportunity of bringing forth some of the deepest culture in this place. I've had businesses for years in the French Quarters, galleries, and everything like this. The other night, a gentleman came up to ask me, he said, why don't you have any Indians, aka Black Indians, right? And I said, well, I cannot get any support for that here in this place at all. And I got a family to feed. So part of our mission now is to bring forth some of the deepest aspects and the deepest aspects of this culture and popularize that.
Something I've been saying a lot lately, and it's based off of something Gordon Parks said, someone who I really look up to, and he wrote in one of his books. He said 3 things he longed for: good health, undying love, and a place on the calendar for opportunity. And I think this city, no doubt, the middle part is we mastered that here. I mean, I think all artists understand that they have a role to play. They're loved by the community. You know, with the backdrop with the music in the backdrop, with an image on the postcard. But I think good health is something that we deal with. We just lost a good friend of mine, Travis Hill, Trumpet Black, and that's something that could be examined in terms of the health care of our musicians, of our artists. And then the place on the calendar for opportunity. I think opportunity could be seen on various levels, and I think oftentimes opportunity comes for artists, but how we value those opportunities, or how people value artists in this city is something that could be looked into. I think the artists, the culture bearers of the city should be the ones that are invested into the most. So I think young artists, older artists, they need a lot of support. And I think it's not enough just to say, come do this for us because it's a good opportunity. You're going to get your name out, or you're going to get, this happens. I think there needs to be investment into the musicians, into the visual artists, into the dancers, into the, that's what I think needs to be done in the city. Yeah.
Just as a sidebar, I can tell you that in what I've done as an artist for 20 years and having a gallery, it's like people say, I get this great opportunity, it'd be great exposure for your artists. So I said, they could die from overexposure. I said, they need to get paid.
Right.
And they need to be, instead of taking our culture for granted, we need to step up and invest the dollars and cents in all aspects of our culture. Specifically, mine is the visual arts, but so that because there is opportunity, it's how it's manifested in this city, and then it's how it's exported to the rest of the country, because there is an interest.
Right, and just to clarify, I don't want to speak for all artists and say that we're bound by cupidity or we desire riches and everything, but I do think there needs to be an investment, because I think the artists are the ones that people are, that's the culture that people are coming in for. So I think it's unfortunate that the poorest of the people in this community are the ones being pushed out, and they're the ones that are creating the gumbo, making the music. So it's kind of like this mix that needs to be really, really looked into, and I'm pretty sure there'll be more conversations about that, hopefully, along this day.
Leonard, what do you think?
Um,
If you could change one thing.
Well, for me, it goes back to children. If I could change one thing, I'd have every child take a mandatory art class.
We'll start there. So that's like the most brilliant thing, because we've taken arts education out of our schools, and we wonder why there's such a lack for appreciation and just opportunities that exist as well. So I think that's something. I mean, that's echoed across the entire country, and I wish we would move in that direction. We're going to take a couple of questions. So there's a.
Hey, my name is Winta Gourmet. I'm a freelance journalist here, and I just moved to the city this past spring in the middle of March. So I'm curious, from your perspective as artists, is there anything about the city or about Hurricane Katrina that your art seeks to explain, re-explain, anything that's misunderstood by people from outside of the city that your art is trying to speak to? So if you could expand on that idea.
I'll start that one. Yeah, me personally, I am a lover of our culture. We have one of the most awesome and deepest cultures in the world, in my opinion. So one of the things that I've been blessed to be able to do through the genius of our culture and my family's culture is to try to share that with others, including natives and locals, because it's so deep that as native as you may be, you still don't know all the deep aspects of this culture. I'm still learning every day something new. And so one of the things I do is write stories and put them on the back of my art and try to make the stories fun, to try to inspire people to take a deeper look at the deeper aspects of our culture. It's a ball. I have a ball doing that.
Brandan?
I think what I try to do as best as possible is just be as truthful as possible. And I think that's every artist's intention and goal. Paul Robinson said, artists are the gatekeepers of truth. And I think that whether we're conscious of it or not, that we have to speak from this perspective of authenticity. And that's just what shaped me. I mean, this city shaped me. This city continues to inform me. I learn every day, like Marcus just said. I mean, I try to learn as much as I can, and that has no choice but to peek its way through the work I create. So whether it's like something fully intentionalized, where it's a part of the mission, or whether it's just something that is so apparent because of who I am and because of me just trying to be truthful when I create. So that's just the way I kind of respond to that.
Just like what you said about authenticity, that's, coming from, where I come from and going to a place like Yale, it made me reflect on my childhood so much the past year. And that's why I'm focusing on children. I feel like they just don't have a voice, and kind of want to give them one if I can.
If I could add a kind of a closing comment to that, I think the heat just went on in here, maybe it's just me. That one of the things that the dichotomy we find ourselves in with regard to Katrina is that's looking back, and the influence of that is one thing, but I think a lot of people want to also, as artists, look forward and to see what the future is, because as I've talked to a number of people, we're at the sharp end of the spear. We're the ones that are going out there and kind of thinking of the new ideas, the new consequences. And Katrina is 10 years old, and a lot of that was, I don't want to say artistically, let me step backwards. You can't go through the largest man-made disaster in this country's history and not have amazing art come from it. But that's after a year or two, artists have built their studios back, and those ideas, it depends if you believe in does art come from pleasure or from pain? And in this situation, there's a lot of pain, and so moving that dial forward and the response to Katrina and the artwork that was influenced by Katrina, but now I think that a lot of the artists in the city are trying to move forward as well and look at what the future of this city and this country and these issues that we're talking about specifically, how they manifest themselves. So that's what, for me, is we have a long history of creativity in this community, but we also have this thing that happened to all of us. And we share that, but as we move forward, we're hopefully moving forward with the creativity that is embraced in this panel, but also that is a part of the DNA that exists in this city. You drink the water, you have creativity. It's there, and it's a part of it. And it's one of the reasons, like Brandan said, it's why people come here. It's one of the main, culture is the lifeblood of the city, and we have to keep that alive and well. So thank you very much for this being here. Appreciate it.